Hi, I'm Nicholas Lodge. I'd like to introduce you to my new Flower Pro Rose Calyx mold. So this innovative mold, along with my other Flower Pro collection by Katy Design, enables you to be able to make 3 different sizes of rose calyx, which relate to the, in Flower Pro book, the 3 sizes of roses. In my Flower Pro videos on YouTube, we have, obviously this is the cone mold, which makes a small, a medium and a large cone. This uses a 70mm, a 90mm and a 110mm size cutter. So these 3 cones represent obviously small, medium and large roses, and so this is the calyx for the small rose, for the medium rose, for the large rose. In the mold, you'll see how obviously the mold has a recess in here, and you obviously get a really nice shaped calyx. These are used to make the little ovaries which go on the back of the rose. So this just, the advantage of using this over a cutter, it's a one-step process, and plus also you get really a very nice shaped calyx with nice detail, and you don't have to snip the little small snips in the calyx feathering. When we make obviously rose calyxes, typically we're going to use green paste. So you can use obviously a pre-made gum paste or flower modeling paste. So you know, green, could use obviously a bright green here, a darker green. So there's lots of different options on color. Alternatively, you can use white paste here or petal paste, and then you could add obviously a green gel color here. This is like a gooseberry color, which gives you a nice moss green, which actually is the color I'm using for this particular segment. In the Flower Pro book, and also of course on my Flower Pro videos, you'll see here the rose calyxes. These are actually done with white on the inside and then green on the outside. When you're doing a more basic rose, and especially if the rose is going into a spray or a topper for a wedding cake where you don't really see the inside of the calyx or don't really see the calyx, you of course can just put on a straight green one. So I'm actually going to show you 2 variations on this. Now when we are using the calyx, I found that the best thing to do is to use little round biscuit cookie cutters. This is just a 50mm one, this is a 55mm one, and this is a 70mm one. So as you'll see in camera, the standard size cookie cutter is going to be a little bit smaller than the size of the calyx. So just sort of have something. Now if you don't have obviously biscuit cookie cutters, you could also just obviously just cut a square about the same size as the cutter, as there's the cavity. And but this is just a little bit more of a productive way to do this. So when we are doing for example here, I'm going to show you the small size one. Okay, so we're going to take some green paste. So this, as I said, is being colored with the gooseberry color. So it gives you almost like a sagey green here. Now of course if you were making say 12 roses, you could roll out as much paste as you need for this particular project. Just like in my other tutorials and in the book, I'm going to just basically just condition my paste by adding a little bit of vegetable fat, vegetable shortening to this, and roll this out. Remember, with Flower Pro we do have a lot of actually over 20 different YouTubes. There is one YouTube which deals totally with like getting started equipment, and then there's another one on use of paste. So it actually has an explanation to the type of paste I'd recommend. Because generally, just like making flowers, you want to use a paste that would be used that's going to dry hard. So like basically a flower modeling paste, a gum paste to use for this. So I'm going to roll this out. I'm going to go through my pasta machine. So I'm just bringing my pasta machine into camera here. So going to use here is going to go through number 4 on the pasta machine. Now if you don't have a pasta machine, just roll out your paste fairly thin. Now of course you can cut out as many of these as you need for the particular project. So if you were making say 6 small roses, you could cut out multiple discs, and then you're going to just take these and put these into plastic flap or like a plastic page protector, a plastic bag, basically something to stop the ones drying out we're not working with. I'm going to pop my excess paste back into the bag. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take my mold here, so I'm going to show you the small size one. I'm going to take just a little tiny bit of vegetable fat or shortening here on my finger, but just very, very minimal amount. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to just smear that inside, but I said very, very small amount. Because this is fairly shallow, really the process we're using here is very much like if you were making a tart with pastry, almost lining a tart shell. So we're just going to put a little bit of vegetable shortening or fat in there. So what that's going to do is actually going to help to hold the paste into place. I'm going to take my paste here, just going to lay my discs. You see that's just going to be a little tiny bit short of the edge, but these are just standard cutters. And then taking a cosmetic sponge, I'm just going to press this into the mold like this. And with my Dresden tool, so this is called the Dresden tool, remember this wider end is obviously the Dresden tool end, the thinner end is the veining tool end. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to just push this in, so I'm just using my Dresden tool here, just to sort of push this in and almost just actually hollow each of the cavities, because this will give it its characteristic shape, like this. So you see how it's going to actually go into the mold. Next step is we're going to take either a little small scraper or a little tiny mini palette knife here, and I'm going to use just like a sawing action, and I'm going to just saw across the top of the cutter here like that. So you can see how what it's actually going to do is going to cut away the excess paste that we don't need. So you see I'm just using a sawing action, and then you can also do this with the little mini knife here. So with your mini knife, and you can do like 2 of these at a time, 2 cavities at a time. So you see how it's actually now filled the mold. I'm going to just go back in there just once with my cosmetic sponge. And I'm just going to then repress the Dresden tool into each of the cavities. So part of this is going to give you the correct shape as well. Okay, we're just going to flex the mold, and your calyx will come out. So as you can see here, you have a beautiful calyx. Alright, and it's got the traditional feathering. If you watch my Flower Pro, obviously YouTube's on making roses, you'll see how usually when I do a traditional cutter calyx, I feather the head and the legs. Once we get to this point, you see how this is going to give you a little bit of a rounded, so it's actually a much nicer shape than a cutter, which has pretty much a square edge to it. At this point here, we would take this and we pop this onto a cosmetic sponge with a hole in the middle of it. Okay, so this is going to just go onto here like so, and then just pop your extra paste back into there. Now when we're doing the calyx on a rose small, mid-size, full size, fully blown size, obviously this here shows the three sizes of roses shown with using Flower Pro. So this is a small rose, medium rose, large rose. This is a tied bud, and I said these are all shown on the video. But when we're doing it actually on the mid-size, full size, and fully blown, we're going to take some egg white, and we're going to brush our egg white about 2/3 of the way up the calyx. So this is going to just sort of be brushed up about 2/3 of the way up, because we actually want the tip to curl back a little bit. So then we're going to take the rose here. So this is a small size rose. Now most of the time I put the calyx on prior to dusting. This rose hasn't been dusted, but sometimes when I'm doing really dark colors, if you're going to be dusting a lot of powder onto your rose, sometimes what I do is I dust the flower first, then steam it, and then I would put the calyx on afterwards, because if not, you're going to sometimes contaminate your calyx. So you're just going to bring this up, and you're just going to position this up so that it's going to be positioned, and you're just going to just gently press this on to the rose. So this is going to go around the back of the rose here like so. Just press it with your fingers, and then I'm just going to use you can use your little companion tool or your veining tool here. Just going to just curl this back here like so. So the top of the rose calyx curls back, because remember we only put the egg white 2/3 of the way, so the top part of the calyx will curl back a little bit like this, and you can see how you get the calyx. So this would be like a very basic calyx. So as I explained in the beginning of this segment, if you were doing a rose where you really were putting these like in a posy topper on a wedding cake and you really don't see the calyx, this just gives you a very simple calyx. We're going to do the two-tone calyx here. So what we do is we take a little bit of green, a little bit of white paste. So of course, depending on how many roses you're doing, when I actually showed the calyx on the videos and in the book here, this obviously shows a spray of 5 roses. Okay, so you can see here 5 roses. In the actual Flower Pro book here for the calyx, it actually tells you to to take a number 14 log of green and a number 14 log of white. So basically like a sausage of white and a sausage of green paste. And that will yield enough for about 5 calyxes, and pretty much it would be the same here. So depending what size or how many roses you'll make. So, but when we do this technique, we're going to just roll out your paste just a little bit. So I'm going to just roll out one of my colors. I'm just going to pop that under a pot there just to stop that drying. And then you'll condition, remember it's important to condition your paste. And then once we have rolled out the second one in a log, sometimes a little silicone mat is good when I'm rolling sausages because you get a little bit more traction on here. I'm going to take then my green paste, I'm going to just flatten this down into a little log shape. Taking then a little bit of white vegetable fat shortening, I'm going to rub a little bit of this on top of the green paste. And then I'm going to flatten out my white, and my white will sit on top. I'm then going to actually roll both of these out. And of course you need to roll these out to the width of the, you can use a little cornstarch on there, but you need to roll these both out to the little bit wider than the width of the actual cutter. So in this case we're obviously using the round cutter as our guide. So if you were doing a medium-sized rose, and then of course if you were going to do this large rose, you would need to make your paste a little bit wider before you feed it through the pasta machine. Okay, now I'm going to show you just a small rose on a bud and how I attach those. So we're going to put this again through the pasta machine on number 4. So this is going to go through on number 4 thickness. So this will actually have enough for, I actually started off with smaller than number 12, so this will have enough for about 3 calyxes. So you see you can just obviously cut out multiples of these. Now the paste you have left, when you mix this together, this will make pale green. So when I do things like certain flowers in my Flower Pro, I reference pale green paste, and you see how that makes just a lighter green. And so just by using equal amounts of green and white makes pale green. So here you can see it's white on one side, and it's green on the other side. So what we want to do is when we put this into the mold, so again, a little bit of vegetable shortening fat into there. So you're going to put green side down, because when we do this technique we want obviously the white to be on the inside. So you're going to lay that into the mold. Again, going to use the same process. We're just going to just press this in with your cosmetic sponge. And then I'm just going to just press this in with my, just making sure it presses to the edge. So remember, this is really helping to hold the paste into the mold. Okay, and then we're going to take now again your little scraper. Now remember, you see how I'm going from, and the reason why I wouldn't go from outside to inside is we'll pull it out of the mold. You're always going to work from the inside to the outside. So you see how you're going to use your little scraper here. You can see you can do like 2 of these at a time. Okay, so just going to just work the little calyx. If you do find it does move out of the mold, just press it back into the mold. But you see how what we now have is we'll have actually a white on the inside, and we'll have the green on the outside of this. This is just going to go under a little, just keep your little pieces of paste under a small pot until you finish your project. Again, I'm just going to now just press my Dresden tool into here. You can just rub over the top there just to make sure that it stays within the perimeter of the mold. But just like with my other Flower Pro, this means that you don't have to use any cutters. And so we're going to now release this from the mold. So you can see how you're going to have a 2-tone calyx. And then we're going to pop this onto, again, your cosmetic sponge. Now, if you were putting the, as shown on my videos, the rose video, if we're going to put this onto a rose bud, what you'd actually do there is you would put your line of egg white down the middle like this. You see, and so then what that will do is when you put it onto a tight bud, it's going to obviously like close up and give you a nice shape here. So you're just going to put this through, and then when you bring this up, so you see how it's going to, the white will be on the inside. You're just going to attach your 2 arms first, and then you will attach the head and the legs. So you're just going to sort of see the inside. When you look into the rose, you can see just the white part on the inside there. Okay. Now the ovaries, when we make the ovary, so on the mold here we have the ovaries here. And so this is a number 5 size ball of paste, this is a number 6 size, and this is a number 7 small. Now again, you can just of course make ovaries like I showed actually on my original videos using just the size guide, 5, 6 and 7 small, which is how I've measured the paste here. And here I've got the little balls of paste. But the nice thing about the ovary mold, it actually gives you a nice shape. It's almost a bit like an acorn cup. And so this is a number 5 size piece on the size guide. So this is number 5. So regular number 5, regular number 6, and then number 7 would be the one that actually goes through the hole. Okay. So when you're using the mold here, you're going to use so this is for example like the number 5 one. So basically what you're going to do here is just going to take your piece of paste. Usually here I would put just a little flour corn starch onto it. Just press and you see that will actually fill the mold level. Okay. If you are a little generous with your paste and you do have excess paste, you can just trim that off. And then what we want to do is when you have that at this stage, you're now going to take your companion tool, and with my companion tool I'm actually going to make a hole through the middle of this until you come to the bottom of the mold and just twist that a little bit. I found that this works really well because then when we slide this up the wire, you're not going to distort it. So you're just going to pop that out. So you see how you're going to get this little, it's going to be like a little half cup. Alright, see the shape of it here? It's like a little acorn cup. And then when you take this, I'm going to show you on the bug because it's a little bit easier to see this. So you're just going to push your wire through and you see that's going to slide up beautifully. When you get close to the top here, I'm going to take some egg white. And then with my egg white, I'm going to just brush a little bit of egg white just on the flat part of this. So just on the flat part, I'm going to take the egg white. It's going to come up to the bottom of and you see how you get a beautiful shaped ovary. And then we're going to use the shaft of your companion tool. Now remember, the companion tool is part of the filler flower, so it is a free gift with the filler flower mold, and it's a wonderful little tool, and you can see how you're going to use that to create your ovary. So depending on how you're going to use your roses would depend on whether you make the green one or the green and white one. And so that is my Flower Pro Calyx mold. So I hope you will enjoy using this new member of the Flower Pro family, and I'll see you again real soon.